I'm sat outside a lovely little Victorian church, and it's a place where many members actually, it's not too far from where I grew up, and it's actually the church where once upon a time, as a very naughty little boy, I sneaked in one day because they had if I say this, people are going to know where it is, but they had a record player that played phony music as if people were doing the bells. They didn't have a bell tower with campanologists. They had fake bells, and they had speakers up in the roof, in the tower, the spire, I guess, and a record player. And I once came in and put Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols on the record deck. I don't know if they ever played it. Don't know why I'm saying that. I'm saying that because this is a little introduction to add to the wonderful podcast that Maggie, my friend, Maggie Whitehouse, has just uploaded onto my Facebook page and onto our YouTube, Maggie's YouTube. We're going to do this. We're going to write a book together, and there's a certain amount of profanity that goes with it, and you'll get that if you listen to our first podcast. And it's not just for the sake of it. We want this to be real. We want this to be for real people. Christianity can be, or faith in general can be very, very difficult because we're faced with our own expectations, our own demands, as well as the expectations of people, other people, maybe people who are our spiritual leaders or guides, or sometimes just people who we muck along with. But there's often a lot of impossible expectations and a complete misreading of what, at least in Christianity's case, what it's about. Because primarily it's about falling back into who you essentially are. And inevitably, when we make our journey through life, we make all sorts of cock-ups, balls-ups, screw-ups, messes. I'm the best at making a mess. But Jesus was not someone who we ever needed to be frightened of. If you look back at the stories in the Bible, he was the one who actually had good news for the people at the bottom, the people in the muddle and the mess. The people that actually seemed to occasionally get the sharp end of his tongue were, ironically, the very ultra-religious, the ones who seemed to have got all the answers right, the ones who seemed to be following all the rules, and yet the ones at the very bottom, in fact, the followers of Jesus, were a real bunch of misfits, and in the end, utter failures. If you look at Mark's Gospel, the earliest Gospel, they bugger off at the very end. There's in the original versions of Mark's Gospel, there is no celebratory ending. It all ends in misery and in a total failure, really. Jesus dies, and the disciples all run away. And yet, from that beginning came everything we know as Christianity. So it's not a religion for perfectionists, even though it has encouraged probably the worst forms of perfectionism. And you will know as well as I do that when we try to become perfect, we're going to be unhappy. We're going to realize very quickly that we can't be. Some of the Protestant reformers believed that we could live in a state of sinless perfection. Can you imagine the stress of having to wake up every day and think, now, how am I going to make sure today that I remain perfect? And of course, the minute you think that you're perfect, you've committed the sin of pride anyway. So it's rather ridiculous. So anyway, we're doing this podcast and hopefully book, which is about train wrecks for Jesus, and how it is perfectly okay to be a complete and utter fuck up and be a Christian. In fact, it's a necessity, because actually to crack open, to come to the end of your own resources, to find and to be honest about your own limitations, your own emptiness, it actually has the irony of making you open and almost like a container ready to receive and to receive the grace. So don't freak out when you see what we're doing. Give it a chance, and I promise you it will be something valuable and something that will speak to you. Thank you, and watch this space.